Do you think that democracy is getting undermined by the fact that people are getting their news and information from more partisan and ideological sources?
I don't think democracy is being strengthened by it. Is it being undermined? Yes. I think that a democracy requires, desperately needs, what are widely perceived by people of all political stripes as objective sources of news. Otherwise, it's too easy to dismiss what is being said by one side or the other simply because they don't share your political point of view. That doesn't mean that network news or cable news or the major newspapers cannot be very tough in terms of the reporting they do. But I don't think their reporters should be perceived as siding with one group rather than the other. I think that does undermine democracy, yes.
To what extent do you think that the internet and social media has exacerbated this problem?
Hugely, hugely. I mean, I think the internet has been, the internet is on one level one of the greatest gifts to mankind that we can imagine. On another level, it is a weapon of mass destruction and is being used as such. The fact of the matter is, it is the internet which has created things like Twitter. It is the internet that has enabled people of extreme ideologies on the left and on the right to get in touch, not just with the half a dozen people sitting at the bar who may share their opinion, but all of a sudden, anyone with access to a laptop, anyone with access to an iPhone, has the capacity of becoming a publisher, a broadcaster, someone who potentially can reach hundreds, thousands. When you and I were young journalists, if you wanted to reach a large audience, you had to work for ABC or the New York Times or the Associated Press or UPI. It wasn't possible for an individual to put something out and make sure that it would reach tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people at a time. The internet makes that possible. That is both a blessing and a curse.
But isn't it in some ways not just a blessing, but it really democratizes as opposed to allowing gatekeepers like you and I once were to say, here's the news?
Yeah, and if you think the democratization of journalism is a good thing, I disagree with you. I don't
Why?
think it is. Because whether, you wouldn't dream of democratizing any other profession. You wouldn't democratize medicine. You wouldn't democratize the law. You wouldn't democratize plumbing or carpentry. You expect a certain level of expertise. You expect a carpenter to have had some training in his trade. I expect a journalist to have had some training in his trade. By the democratization of journalism, you make the process available to people who have absolutely no background in trying to present a fair, balanced point of view. None. So in that sense, obviously we like to think that democracy is in and of itself an unimpeachable word. If something is democratic, it has to be good. Not necessarily so.
Do you think there's any way that the country gets back to what I guess you and I would call the old normal?
No. None. Not a chance.
So how does this movie go?
Well, I think we can only express a hope, a prayer even, that it doesn't go in the direction of violence. On one level, and I'm not the first to say this and won't be the last, we clearly are already engaged in a sort of ideological civil war in this country. For the time being, it has been waged with at least a minimum of bloodshed. I am wondering, for example, what's going to happen. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that whoever the Democratic candidate is defeats Donald Trump in November. We then have a period from early November until the 20th of January, that interregnum period, when Donald Trump is still president, but he knows that he only has a few months left to serve. How do you think that period will go? Do you think he will be a gracious loser? Do you think that he will accept defeat and reach out the hand of friendship to whoever is going to replace him? I don't think so. Can I see Donald Trump at that point making the argument that the election was stolen? Possibility. And I think there are, unfortunately, millions of people in this country today who would respond to that in a fashion that, I'm not even sure I really want to consider all the consequences of where that might go. Could it lead to violence? Yes, it could.